Hey, folks. So I'm super excited about this podcast episode. I had the privilege of interviewing Tyler Copenhaver, and I really hope that I pronounce his name correctly. He's significantly larger than me and way more experience in combat sports. But he's also an amazing entrepreneur. He's got the kind of story that I love because uh, he didn't come from privilege, and he's been incredibly successful building a path himself. And yes, if you're into education, he's got degrees, but he didn't do it the way most people do it. And I always find that kind of story just fascinating because it completely flips to the opposite from the standard narrative about you have to go from high school to college before you can be successful. So here's Tyler.
Tyler is awesome. He's on TikTok. You guys got to find him there. Just FYI, first of all. Second of all, he has a book in the works that I was lucky enough to read a pre-release version of. I don't know what else to call it. And it made me really curious and super inspired because reading between the lines, Tyler has a bunch of mental models that allow him to be very productive and very effective. And not everybody has those mental models. And since I'm all about mental health education, and mental models are one of the key ingredients to your mental health working well, I want to see if we can get some of those teased out, even if Tyler isn't aware that he has them right now.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. It's I'm a huge fan of root cause analysis. Because for everything I've ever done technical, if something breaks, right, I want to know like what's underneath it, right? How come it broke? Or if it's really, really successful, I want to know why. So can you give like a 2-minute version of your career story? Like how you started and how it ended, just so people have context?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know where to start except the start, right? So, and I think it's important too, because I think all of this is relevant as I try to self-analyze. So I went to, in high school, didn't care about school at all. You know, like I had my first full-time job at 13 years old, and I was like, this school stuff, this just gets in the way, you know, like growing up with like nothing. And like finally being able to work and like having clothes and being able to eat food at, out, like all that stuff was huge to me. And I'm like, this school stuff, what is this? Right. And I didn't totally get a fair shot always either. I had a kind of an interesting upbringing that I think some people held against me. And so I think it started there. And I've always had kind of I guess a good work ethic where quite often it's school and a job, 2 jobs, 2 jobs in school, whatever. And so that's like one thing I've been disciplined to do since I was 13 years old, and so that led into a sales career early on. And so I was making well over 6 figures at 21 years old or something like that. Working in sales taught me a ton. I actually went in, I was bartending on the side. So I guess I was 21, 22, bartending on the side. Went in and I applied for a lube tech job so I could have 2 jobs, And so they said, well, why don't we try you on the sales floor? We think you'd be really good on the sales floor. You can be a lube tech, you can work in the shop, but we think you ought to try the sales floor. So I did, and I did really well. And then I'll shorten the story. There was a lot more to it, but from there, excelling in this, getting promoted fast, all these things. I'm like, okay, I got this sales thing down, right? And like my sales approach is completely different than, most people. I just treat people with kindness, respect, like I give them good customer service. I'm on the ball. Like you don't have to wait more than usually a couple minutes to get an email back from me if I'm in my work mode. So like those things just led to being successful in sales. And I'm like, okay, well, I could do this with anything, right? And so I'm like, but I want to get into an industry that I'm so interested in, and so I'm like applying to like Spy sunglasses and, I'm trying to think like Converse shoes and, like some really like things that I thought were awesome. And I always met with no degree. We don't want you even, and like, and so I finally, because at first I was this guy that was like, oh, I don't need school, like, especially like I was making a good income early, that sort of stuff. And then school roadblocked me. And so I'm like, finally, I'm like, okay, I'm scared of this school thing. My teachers all told me I was stupid, and so I'm believing this. And so I get involved with college, and I have to start at all the basic level classes basically because I, was near a high school dropout, and so I had to start basically from scratch. But then I actually did really well, and that gave me some confidence. And after I had a little bit of confidence, I was like, you know what? Screw these guys. And I think maybe if you were to tease out a mental framework for me, I have a chip on my shoulder in some ways, and but I use anger very productively, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
You'll never see me angry, like a girlfriend of 6 years would never see me angry. An employee of 10 years would rarely see me angry, right? But I have a deep lying anger, and it motivates me, right? So I'm like, well, what's the hardest degree that they have at school? And I'm like, biochemistry. I think that's probably pretty hard. So I went in, I flipped my coursework. I had taken all the basic business stuff. I flipped over to biochemistry, ended up getting a degree in biochemistry. And my last year in my biochemistry career, or my last year in school, I was slipping cars on the side in my backyard and got in trouble for it with the city. That led to opening what I thought was going to be a one-man shop that was going to flip in 2 years and become a veterinarian. When you spend that much time and heartache building something, couldn't let it go at 2 years. So I spent another 7 or 8 years in that business, opened 3 others along the way, sold them all at some points, and then spent the last 2 years doing pro bono consulting for people losing their business, working on my philanthropy projects. We're in our studio right now. We bought a production studio. And one of the things that we do with it is we know content marketing is key to small business these days. But the other thing is we want content for good. So many people use content for their own selfish reasons. We're trying to find ways to use content for good. So I think that's probably enough of my roadmap.
Awesome.
I can go into more of that stuff if you want, but I don't want to take up the whole show.
No, but that's really good framing. Especially, I'm just laughing. So it's so funny that you almost drop out of high school, but because you're making so much money that high school is a hindrance, and you're killing it in your early 20s, and you don't have any college debt, which is amazing, right? Like that's a whole awesome story by itself. And you've learned the sales skill, which is so key in so many parts of life. And then the whole college thing, and you get a degree in biochem, but you're doing car stuff, I'm like, that is a non-standard juxtaposition. That's awesome,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. But it's that part of what I'm hearing is that you see a pattern and opportunity that other people might not see, right? Like you start flipping cars, right?
Yeah.
Because you knew how to do it. You saw the upside of it. The work didn't scare you, right?
Yeah.
And for most people, I think a thing you said a while ago about having this work ethic and the anger driving you, right? Whatever it is, the chip on your shoulder, like that's awesome, right? To have that as an underlying motivator. Yeah, that is beautiful. I
tell people all the time, get angry about your success. It's like I really like to speak to people that came from upbringings that were tough, right? And
Sure.
Because there's that phase, like we do a lot with bullying too. One of our content for good things is a charity podcast we do. My co-host is a former UFC fighter who was a bullied kid. And then I realized it's crazy. You go to do something for somebody else because I saw this heartbreaking documentary on bullied kids. I'm like, I got to do something for these kids. And at first I was like, I'm going to go out there and ride the bus so nobody touches them, right? And well, I can't ride the bus with every single kid, And
right.
But I learned through the process. I was actually bullied, but you don't think of bullying being adults, right? As a kid, but I was bullied by friends' parents, by teachers, this sort of thing. So I have a chip on my shoulder about that, and it leads me, I think, to want to help kids too, because they can be actually, I hate to say this, I feel weird saying it, but I'm living proof. You can come from nothing You can have a chip on your shoulder. You can narrowly avoid catastrophe. The stats on like a kid whose dad was in prison, going to prison, is like 97%. So like I beat the odds of like 3%, you know? And so,
Yeah.
and so it's like, I like to help other kids beat those odds too, you know, or other people that don't think they can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very, very cool. And congratulations, you know, mad props to you for doing that. When you can beat the odds like that, that's always impressive. Yeah, that's very cool. Total segue. Do you know Jesse Crossan by any chance?
No, I don't.
Okay, I got to hook you guys up. He's formerly incarcerated. He's been out for maybe a year and a half. He spent 19 years
Wow.
inside. He went in when he was, I think, 18.
Wow.
Yeah, but he's got this really, like, he is so put together. He actually, one of his episodes, he talked about how going to jail was the thing that saved his life, because he got sober. He started thinking about personal growth, did a bunch of personal work, got a degree in psychology.
Wow.
And
awesome.
now he's focused on helping folks that are formerly incarcerated not go back.
Yeah.
And so he's
That's
really
a big one.
Yeah, he's focused on those programs, and I think you guys could have real interesting conversations.
Definitely. I mean, that's the thing I've realized. So Malcolm Gladwell, I love his books. They just get me like my mind reeling, you know. And so like he went in one of his books, like looking at intelligence versus adversity, and what is the builder of more successful people. And it's like, so we need more people that have gone through adversities to make it, because they're the ones that do amazing things in this world, and they have a heart for where they came from, right? So just like the guy you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's sad when we underestimate the capabilities of people who've been through adversity.
Yeah.
And there's this I just had this woman yesterday who kind of was talking about how, you know, people who come from adversity have so many challenges, and I was thinking, but they have so many superpowers.
Yeah.
You know, like they have all these strengths. It's just that someone needs to be able to help them, to guide them, to show them examples like you, and say, look, you know, here's what's possible, right? Like this guy did it, right? We've got a friend of ours who he grew up on Saipan, which is it's a U.S. protectorate. It's a trust territory, I think. Pretty rough childhood. They didn't have electricity until I think he was 18 in his house, right?
Yeah.
And he was fishing in the middle of the night to feed the family, and did horrible in high school. But he came here, went to college, realized college was easier than night diving.
Yeah.
Became a 4.0 GPA student, started volunteering to help grad students at Berkeley. Now I think he's working on his PhD at Berkeley now in genomics.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
He just does he works like, but he loves it, because he's like, this work is so easy compared to what I used to do.
Yeah.
And he's internally motivated to do really well.
Yeah.
It's like, he's such a, and I'm so glad that he saw that, oh wait, this college stuff is so easy compared to what I used to do.
Yeah. Yep.
And you know, and he just put his work ethic to use, right? Just like you did. It's amazing. Yeah.
It's so interesting, because, you know, I tell like kids from, you know, like kind of rougher areas all the time. It's like, your life, whether you know it or not, is preparing you perfectly for business. It's like, you're getting a job early, you know, like you're having to deal with adversities. It's like, you know, people used to ask me in my business all the time, how do you stay so calm when this stuff happens? You know, because you have nightmare stuff that come up, you know, quick, short segue, you know, this guy comes in, he has a one-of-a-kind Maserati with his name on the plaque, one-of-a-kind color. We had another client in at the same time, and he had a handicap van, like $100,000 handicap van, that he liked us to put these like cool LED light systems in. So out of nowhere, the door on the handicap van comes down, and it's parked a little too close to that one-of-a-kind Maserati. It goes down the whole door, right?
Oh.
So, and and like you're dying inside. I go over, take
Right.
a picture, look at it, and I just start deciding how I'm going to solve the problem,
Right.
and like
Right.
we had a new guy that's like, does this kind of stuff happen all the time? Look at the boss, he's like calm as an ice cube, inside I'm dying a little bit, to be honest. But it's like, I
Right.
tell
Right.
kids that it's like, when you've grown up with stuff that you got to get past, and I don't really want to mention anything specifically, but if you've had like things that are like awful that you've had to deal with,
Yeah.
like really, the scratch wheel, you figure out a way to fix it, right?
Right.
That is
Right.
nothing compared to, and so I tell these kids, I'm like, it sucks that you've been given this stuff, right? This is horrible stuff. I don't want it on anybody, but at least you can use it, right? So
Right.
now
Right.
a business problem is nothing compared to that problem, that horrifying thing you had to deal with. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you're talking about that and how the strength from adversity, because last night my partner and I were talking about how we're doing a talk at a local private high school. We're preparing for it. I think we're doing it in August, and we were talking about how the kids there they're so unused to adversity
yeah.
that they don't know how to handle when school's hard.
Yeah.
And their time management skills and their willingness to be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
it's just not there, right? Because their parents have snowplowed them a lot,
Yeah.
and now they can't.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's such a key point, actually, because how many of the kids out there right now are raised with nothing, saying, I don't have the connections, I don't have the parents, I don't have the, and little do they know that they're better prepared than the kid that has all the connections,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do they have to work harder? Yes, that's your lot in life, right? I looked at, it's like when I look back and I don't think I would have advised me to open a business when I did. I wouldn't have advised me to open in the section I did, the way I did it, anything, because it was lofty and foolish the way I did it. I did it with a couple grand by living in the place. And like my competitors, the richest man in Arizona, right? So that's my competitive shop. So here I am, a poor kid with a couple grand, and I'm going to take on, a billionaire, right? And so, but what I found is that's where you can hedge the gap, right? It's like the billionaire or, anybody that's floated by the billionaire, his son or anything, they're not going to work 120 hours a week. On Friday night, they're going to be out partying, they're going to buy the sports car instead of driving the minivan or taking the bus. These are not fun parts of entrepreneurship, right? This isn't the part that anybody wants to talk about, but it's the truth. I hedged the gap because I was willing to live at my location off $50 a week, and like not have hot water, and like I worked nonstop. Everything went towards the business, even when we were over $1 million company, I lived in a trailer with no electricity and no water, and paid people over six figures in my business. But guess what? That was more money. I plowed into more equipment to get ahead of my competitors, so you just have to suffer more.
Yeah. And that you have to suffer more is that's such not the message people get today.
Yeah.
And the people that have the strength from doing that, it goes back to they don't recognize the value of it yet because that's not the standard narrative.
No.
Yeah.
Bill, that's why I'm not very popular, honestly. I have a lot of people, and like it touches my heart to do this stuff. It's a fear, like I was telling you earlier, that I had to overcome. I was scared to death. We were offered 4 reality shows in my first company. I turned them all down, and I've shied away from social media. If you walked into my place, most people thought one of my employees owned it because I refused to say I owned it. If you saw me on the streets and said, nice shirt, what do you do there? I work there, and I guess I thought I was being humble, but it's now I'm about impact, right? And I realize, and it's tough for me because it's like, if I had never read another story about somebody making it, then I probably wouldn't have seen it possible either, and I've been blessed to work around really wealthy people, serving them mostly in my life, to realize the normalcy of wealthy people and to realize they won't bleed like a kid from the streets, like to get what they want. So,
yeah. And that is an awesome message. Like you need to put that on a t-shirt. Yeah. there's something about how there's something really important in that, and part of that message is it's not about where you come from, it's about the work you're willing to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because there's a I can't remember who said this, and I want to say maybe it was Gary Vee, but he said something about this idea of generational wealth, and he said that, you know, the whoever makes, you know, they come from a rough background, they make a ton of money, right? Like you, right?
Yeah.
The next generation doesn't have the same drive, and they may stay even, and the following generation only knows how to spend. And the problem becomes actually, how do they not lose all the money?
Yeah.
And it's this weird, like 3 or 4 generation pattern that happens, and it's really unusual when you can find a family where they break that cycle somehow.
Yeah. I don't think generational wealth is good for anybody. I don't think it's good for the world. I don't think it's good for the offspring. I mean, I can't think of a single way other than world dominance that it's good for people. You know, it's like, I mean, because you get so far ahead, right? You know, and then it's like, we need more underdogs winning. That's what we need in this world.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say 100%. Yeah.
My hippie hypothesis is, if you can get more underdogs into business and they get their own resources, they go back and they change the neighborhoods where they came from. And now you're saving the world, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I bless somebody like, I just watched a documentary on Robert Kennedy Jr. You know, it's like, here's a person raised a privilege that still cared, right? And so, and I got to hand it to him, because it's easy to care about where you came from if you saw it, right? Or it's like, when I go to Cambodia and I see the poor kids, you know, I'm seeing that, right? I want to make an impact on that. If your whole life has had you in the lofty cloud, you know, of like this, like possessional, like wealth, mansions, you know, you can't understand the real world. And so I applaud somebody like, the Prince Harry, you know, that's trying to get out. He doesn't really understand the world, but at least he's trying. Or Robert Kennedy, you know, it's like he went out, you know, and he was trying to do good, I felt, for the world, you know. And these are people that don't even totally understand it, right? So
yeah, it's, you know, it's interesting. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot, and part of the time we lived in the Philippines. And you know, driving around off base, you know, you get to see that huge wealth difference that they have there. And it's a real eye opener. You know, it's such a cultural difference where you go someplace and clean drinking water is a rarity. Yeah.
I mean, everybody, I swear, you know, like part of the problem, and I don't like to dive into this too much about like this polarization of the country around, you know, like treating people, you know, based on religion or skin color or anything like that. Let's buy them a ticket somewhere in the world. You know, you see, like, I had an old man run up to me in Chechnya and give me a hug and thank you for coming to my country. I'm in Nigeria where the kids pet my arms like a cat, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I was just in Cambodia walking with kids in a trash dump, and they're jumping on me and smiling. It's like, you cannot not have a heart for the world after you experience it.
Yeah. That's such a, you got to start videoing that. It would be awesome on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, right? You need to get a cameraman to follow you around and video that, because that's one of the things people don't see.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have exposure to that. And instead they see some celebrity, you know, being stoked that he got some unique pair of Jordans.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like,
and that's not the world. And so I don't hope you don't mind that I bring this up. But did you see anything I've been posting about redefining heroes?
No, I didn't see that yet. When did you post it?
I posted a couple weeks ago and actually it's been a couple months ago. So we're content for good, right? Is one of our focuses these days.
Yeah.
And so we believe, another hypothesis is the world is defined by the heroes it looks at, right?
Right.
And not to segue too much, but what really hit home for me here was watching a documentary on Mexico and how the kids down there are looking up to the gangsters more than they're looking up to school teachers or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? That sucks. You know, it's like, that's not good if kids are like, these are their heroes. But I thought about in our own society, it's like, you know, we look at the people with the like crazy plastic surgery and the sports cars and like, these are our heroes, right? And like, that's not good either. And so I'm like, we need to redefine what a hero is, because heroes to me are people out there doing amazing works in the world that are selfless. And so we set out to now redefine the word hero, right? So we search the world literally, and we scour for people that are doing amazing selfless works that we want to bring that title hero to. And so I've watched this guy, you know, like, hey, top 3 people you'd have coffee with. One of them was this man. I've watched him for years, you know, and so his name's Scott Neeson. And his story hits me in so many levels. You know, he was a high school dropout, started working as a projectionist in a movie yard, worked his way all the way up incredibly to president of Fox Studios. And he was responsible for Braveheart and Titanic and X-Men, all these huge, huge movies, right? Wow. And so he then got poached, from my understanding, by Sony Studios because he was doing so well. And so, and just to tell you Scott's life, Scott's living in the mansion. He's got the Hollywood girlfriend. He's got the sports cars and the boats, you know, like he's living it, you know. This guy is the dream, right? He is famous, he is rich, he is, you know, and like all this stuff. So he goes over to Cambodia and he finds these kids in a trash yard in this little break that he had. And he's like, I got to do something about this. So what does he do smartly? He goes back to his Hollywood job where he's making millions of dollars. He starts sending money back there, right? You know, like trying to help these kids go to school, basically. Because in Cambodia, they're literally living in this trash pit. And like the kids are like, not to like horrify people, but like think of a smoldering volcano lava, because this place is on fire underneath. And the kids can actually fall through and burn alive. They're getting run over they're getting run over by the trucks. They're making $3 a day to search this trash, like with needles and all kinds of crazy stuff. Not only that, sex trafficking is the biggest in the world in Cambodia at one point. So Scott's like, and his story is incredible. I'm just paraphrasing it. There's so much more to it. His turning point is like, it gives me goosebumps, you know, but like, we'll save that for, you know, but anyway, so I've been talking, like looking at Scott for years. I'm like, this guy is so amazing. You know, he basically, and then he ends up selling everything he owns. He goes over there, he starts a foundation. He's now got 1,700 kids. And so not only that, but he has to feed and house the parents so they don't pull the kids out of school. So and now he's got kids going to college at this point because he's been doing it for 17 years. And so I'm like, this guy is a hero. Like how does the world not know who Scott Neeson is?
I've never heard the story before. That's crazy.
Yeah. So Redefining Heroes
documentary.
Yeah, goes over there and we film. So we film Scott doing what he does and we bring awareness to the foundation. This is 100% charity based. We just got back 2 months ago. And we basically film and talk to Scott about like his, you know, life. And, you know, I think there's so much there from his life that you can learn so much from. But we bring awareness to him. We try to redefine the word hero. We try to get UCG sponsorships. So hopefully, you know, like it was our first episode. We struggled to get anybody to lock on. All the money goes to his charity, by the way, for these episodes. And or each episode's a different hero, obviously. So they get the money. But we also monetize our YouTube channel, hopefully. This one turned out so good, we're actually waiting to enter it in a film festival just in case we can hit something there. So basically, that's our new program. We use content for good. We travel the world finding heroes, and then we try to bring awareness to their charity and then hope that we're monetizing our channels well enough to give from our own channels. So content for good, right?
That is so cool. Is this video on YouTube right now?
No, Bill, between you and I, offline, I will send you the trailer. So you can get
that's
a peek
awesome.
at it.
Thank you.
Can't release it yet because since we're trying to get into film festival, it's driving me nuts. And we're actually in the process. We're actually in the process of choosing the second hero right now. We're looking at somebody in the Peruvian rainforest, or we're also looking at somebody in the Congo. So we'll be taking off towards the end of the year to film another episode, which I'm really excited about. Yeah. And so you mentioned bringing this to the world. That's what we're trying to do. Is bring this to the world.
Yeah. That is so cool. I like, now I'm like, okay, I really want to see this video. Like,
Yeah. we
is there
we've been
a film
so
festival?
excited about it.
Because, you know, one of the, like, because I have one of my kids is in college and one of them's in high school still. He's graduating this year, so he'll be done in a couple of weeks. But the opportunity to show stuff like that to kids at high school, like, because around, one of the things I noticed around here is that there is a limited set of mental models that kids have around here for success.
Yeah.
Because they see their parents, you know, I live in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, so people around here, mostly people around here are in tech in some way, shape, or form, or tech adjacent. And so the kids don't have a mental model of anything for the most part outside of that. And part of the problem is that it might not excite them.
Yeah.
And that's part of the challenge, is that, and if the parents don't have the experience to say, hey, you know, you could work in a car shop, you could learn how to sell and skip college and not start until you're in your 20s, and there's all these other ways to approach the world. And the thing that we notice is all these high school students who, they feel like they have to follow a track, but they're not excited about it. And that's very disempowering, and it's ultimately a driver of bad mental health.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
I mean, I had guys, you know, a window tinter. Did you know a window tinter makes well over $100,000 a year? Did you know a good automotive painter makes well over $100,000 a year? Do you know a good upholsterer is nearly a dying art in the world, makes over $100,000 a year? You don't, I am a huge advocate for education in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be your path. You know, I got value. I'm glad I went for my biochem degree. I'm glad I started businesses and then got my MBA. You know, it made, like, getting my MBA after knowing business and having success in business was amazing, because then I'm not from the big business world at all, the corporate world. My exposure is really limited. So everything I know for the most part is mom and pop shops, that sort of stuff. But I was able to snag tools that aren't even used in small business from my MBA programs. And now it's one of the things I help people with, right? So I think you always have to be learning. You know, I'm self-learning all the time too. I'm reading, podcasting, you know, that sort of stuff. I mean, one of the great things that you realize, I'm sure too, you can speak to this, is I like podcasting because I like to learn, and I can find, I love, you know, fascinating people, you know, and so it's like, and you learn so much, you know, just talking to people about things that they're involved with.
Right. Yeah. And I consume podcasts to get ideas of where to go deep dive.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
I think The Game with Alex Hormozy.
Okay. I've never listened to it.
Oh my God. So Hormozy's a self-made business guy like you, only he came up, his dad and his mom are both MDs.
Oh, okay.
And he went down the track of doing everything to make his parents happy, and then realized that he was going to kill himself. And quit a pretty good consulting gig, and opened a gym. And did a series of gyms and did a bunch of other gym related stuff. Ended up selling it all, making millions. And now his forte is building businesses. And he speaks really well and completely differently from how you do about building business. So I really like the juxtaposition of your perspective and his perspective, right? It's so interesting, because the way that you look at it is so different. Right. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's like two completely different approaches and information sets
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh, I get to, it's like having two completely different teachers in the same
Yeah.
area, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I get to have it all.
Yeah.
And then I think probably second would be, I really like Joe Rogan.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he's so diverse. Like is
Yeah.
like all over the map, right? And
I have to be a fan of him and Elon because they accidentally said my company's name online one time, or so Joe was interviewing Elon, and Joe dropped our company name. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess we got to be a fan now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we weren't before, but we really had to be after that.
Yeah, after that, you got it. And then I really like the Huberman Labs.
Oh, I don't know that one either.
Oh, so Andrew Huberman, he's a neurology prof at Stanford.
Yeah.
And very leading edge about how stuff works, largely around brain chemistry. So
I would love that. Yeah.
Right down your alley, right?
Yeah, I nerd out on that stuff.
Yeah.
My favorite, honestly, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I probably could pursue a PhD in epigenetics. Like I'm fascinated by it, you know, and in some ways, because I was tracking vet school at one point, in some ways you're like, think about how much different your life would be. And it's like, I still nerd out on that stuff. I still absolutely love it. That's what you have a chip on your shoulder. So you pursue this degree that's like, kind of like a flip off to people, but then it's like, whoa, this stuff is awesome. This is cool. So I've worked in a spider lab, doing research on amino acid content in spider silk for a year. Amazing. Right. And changed my life, and I actually love spiders now too. They actually have a personality, but it's like, so just so cool. And Steve Jobs is not he has some great business stuff. I try to, and that's what kids should realize too. Don't take everything, right? Don't take the turtleneck. Don't take, he was awful to people, and he didn't take care of his daughter. And, Woz is a beautiful man, and he took advantage of Woz over and over again. But he has some good business stuff, and including one of my favorite speeches of all time, which is connecting the dots, right? None of it makes sense. Spider Lab, sales, biochemistry, none of that makes sense, right? Getting your butt kicked in business through fires and robberies and everything else, but now everything I'm doing right now, it's like, whoa, now it makes sense, right? Looking backwards, it makes so much sense. When you're doing it, nah.
Yeah. And that's, I think that part of the reason you're able to do that is because you fell in love with the process of learning how to start a business and doing cars and learning biochem and spider labs, right?
Yeah.
I've got friends of mine, if you said spider lab, they'd faint, right? Pour out cold, right? Because they're completely not going anywhere near a spider. But you're playing in the space of loving the process, rather than looking for the end goal, right?
Totally. And I'm such a good puzzler. I see puzzles really well. And that's why I'm so good at, I think, helping people with businesses, if I'm allowed to say that, I see the puzzle so quickly. It's like biochemistry, the reason it was so important that I went to a school of biochemistry, because it was hard. It was really hard. It was challenging. There's bumper stickers that say honk if you pass PChem, which was the last class I had to take for my degree, which is calculus and physics and organic chemistry all wrapped into one, folks, and so it's like, but guess what I don't know, people call me intelligent. I don't think I'm intelligent. I'm a hard worker, right? And I'm curious. And so that curiosity gets me, but I have to make sense of something, I have to boil it down to simplicity, right? So biochemistry is complex. So I had to teach myself how to learn biochemistry by making it simpler, right? But guess what? Now I can explain it to everybody. And that's why, same with business, I do the same thing with business. I boil down these complex things and I make it so a third grader can understand it, because that's the way I had to learn it. Right. So, that's where I think the value came in the biochemistry degree, even though I would love to have a lab and work in it these days, but I don't. So
that's, I think Einstein, is either Einstein or Edison, said you don't really understand something unless you can explain it to a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And so the way that you're talking about that is perfect, because you can do that simplification. And so anybody can understand it, right? It's not some 20,000 foot view thing that I have to have special language to recognize, which is beautiful, right? That's awesome. And it makes it so the stuff that you're saying is accessible to everybody.
I mean, they can, and then think about it this way too. It's like, we don't, like, a lot of people are into fitness, right? I love fitness, you know, like I love to train, you know, with my buddies, MMA stuff. I love to lift weights. I love to hike, all that stuff. You know, I love extreme sports, you know, like, but biochemistry is that, right? So I don't think we do a good enough job sometimes saying, okay, you're into race cars, that's physics, you know, like second you start to put that stuff together, it's like, wow, this now is not just some gobbledygook thrown at me. Like, this is relevant, right? Biochemistry helps you be a better fit person, right? You know, so like, because I understand everything that's going in my body. Do you? You know, it's like, so I guess that's what got me going on the social media stuff to some extent. You know, I think you should approach your peers, you know, like and this is like, you know, Bill, I used to sneak off, and I volunteered at the children's home for 5 years. I had one girlfriend that thought I was cheating on me because I refused to tell anybody, you know, and the only thing they had open there was, I worked in the fulfillment center because it was on Saturdays and I was working so much, I didn't have much time. So I went in there and they save all the heavy furniture for me. By the way, this is one of my nerdiest, like, love things too. It's like charities that find a really good way to support themselves, right? So there's a charity here in Phoenix. It's called Sunshine Acres Children's Home. You donate your furniture to them, they make $1 million a year selling that furniture, which funds their home. So I worked in their fulfillment center lifting furniture, and then like Thursdays I would go to the animal clinic, and they liked me because I was big and I could lift the dogs. And so I would go down there and help the dogs that were getting neutered, you know, lift them off the table and stuff. And so and then I broke my back, and I had another medical issue come up too. And all of a sudden, everything I felt like I was trying to do for the world was gone, right? And so and I think I try not to push my religion on people. People should just know, like, who I am based on the way I live my life and the way I treat people. But, you know, I believe that it was my higher being telling me, I didn't tell you to do all this physical stuff. You love doing that, you know, like, what I want you to do is what you don't want to do. And that's talk about this stuff. You know, it's like, I want you to talk about the way you grew up and why you were, why that worked for you in business. I want you to talk about, like, the way you feel about the real heroes of this world. And that has been so hard, because my message quite often is not popular either. It's like hard work, pain, sweat, blood. But honestly, I got tired of watching people tell everybody it was easy. You know, I got tired of watching people give bad fitness advice that can hurt them. I got tired of seeing tips that can put you into bankruptcy. You know, it's like, business is accounting. Nobody ever talks about accounting besides me. You know, it's like, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't say besides me, but it's not a popular message, right? Right. I learned that the hard way too, right? So I didn't embrace counting at first in my business, not at all. But when I did, oh man, like, world changed, you know, like, now I love it. Absolutely love accounting, because it's the only way to thermometer your business. Before, you're like driving, you know, I don't know, you know, I'm running this business, you know, it's like, but accounting, that gives you your eyes, right? And so, like, and I can teach somebody business accounting for their business, small business, in 3 hours, you know? And so it's like, and they need to do it. I want them to be successful, you know, but some of the information that's out there is like, you know, it's harmful, you know, and like, it'll put you backwards. You know, I guess that's one thing I was lucky for. I didn't like get online to try to learn how to open a business, and maybe it was silly in some ways, but then I didn't get bad information either, because bad information, I think, is worse than no information.
Right. Yeah. And that's the challenge, is how do you assess how helpful the first page of Google search results are? You know, you just trust it, right? You hope.
Yeah.
And, you know, I certainly, you know, in the world that we're in with mental health, I see that all the time, where I'll see search results and be like, I would never tell anybody to do that. Like, no. But it's because, admittedly, we're out on the bleeding edge right now of how to help people have their heads work well. And you know, we haven't published all this content yet We haven't even, I mean, frankly, we haven't even figured out how to effectively tell the story.
Yeah.
And in a short form, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like, given 30 minutes, it's easy to explain, but to try and do it, in a way that people really get it in a 30-second format is a lot harder, right?
Yeah.
And so, we don't, our stuff doesn't show up on Google's first page. And so nobody knows kind of how this works yet.
Because it's not the popular message, and like, honestly,
message. Yeah.
What I find over and over again is like the hard route is the route that's right. It's like, I was telling the story about the protein powder, the first protein powder I ever had. I swear that stuff worked better than anything these days, but it was disgusting. You'd plug your nose and, it's like, but that was the best darn protein powder. What I found through life is anytime you try to take the easy road, it takes you twice. It's like,
right.
If you just go at the hard one from the beginning, and our brain, it's, you can speak to this way more than I can, but it's like, people have literally pulled cars off their kids, with the amount of brain power they have. It's like we don't do enough of tapping into that, right? It's like people are so capable of doing anything they want to do. They have to believe it, for one.
Right. And that's totally the missing piece.
Yeah.
That thing that you just said about people are totally capable. There's all these stories about how you're not capable.
Yeah.
Right? And that's and
I don't believe that for 1 minute.
Yeah, but that's
not 1 minute.
Yeah, that's the place where people get stuck, because they're like, oh, I'm not capable because whatever, I didn't go to this school, or I didn't grow up here, or my parents, whatever it is, right? And yet stories like yours, or the guy that you did the video on who's in Cambodia, like, those aren't mainstream stories.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the unfortunate part, is that they should be. And so, like, the stuff that you're doing with changing the definition of heroes, it's putting a different story. It's making a different mental model available in the world.
Yeah.
For people to go, oh, wait a minute, how did Tyler do that? Like, one of my mental models is, if somebody else can do something, then I can do it too, even if I'm bad at it.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
and then if you practice it, you'll get good at it.
Right. Exactly. But I'm like, I can do a really bad job of painting a car. I can be a horrible car painter. Right.
Yeah.
And it's reps and attention that gets me to be a better car painter.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it may take a lot of reps.
Yeah.
Which is okay, right?
Yeah.
It probably takes more than 2 cars to become a good painter. I'm making a wild guess there, but I'm gonna, but that's not the story that is popular.
No, it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
When I first started to put a little bit of this stuff out there, it's like, Tyler, nobody wants to hear the truth. It's like, well, I'm going to tell it anyways. It's like, I would, and, now I know enough about social media. I don't know, I'm borderline expert now, like, because I've taken courses on it. I've studied people, I've talked to people, I've done it myself. It's like, do I know how to make content that will go viral? Yes. Is it the content that's true and right? No. So will I use it? No. No. I tell you what you don't want to hear.
Right.
We were talking about last night. I was talking with one of my business partners. It's like, you know what? Like, I don't think you should be able to call yourself an entrepreneur if you've ever missed an employee payroll. I don't mean your own payroll. I mean an employee payroll. And because too often people are taking on too many employees. They're not being disciplined enough, and then they don't pay them. And that is like, so this is one thing that people need to take very serious about being an entrepreneur, because that is somebody's life that you're messing with, right? Yeah, that's why this entrepreneur thing, this is serious, right? It's like, let's say you don't like it. A lot of people don't like it, and that's okay. It's not easy. It's not the Ferraris and you get to that. You get to do stuff like, because of all my hard-earned hours for years and years and years, I get to travel the world looking for heroes, right? Amazing. It was worth it, right? It was worth all the pain to do it. But that doesn't happen in a week, you know. That happens after years of doing it, and that's not the message people want to hear. You know, I make fun of the top 12 businesses for 2023 all the time, because this is not the right way to get your business. You know, like, believe it, for me, actually, my business that I first started, the one I worked so hard at, it was the wrong business. You know, it led me to where I'm at now, so I have to be good with it, but it was the wrong business. You know, like, I had a point, like Scott did in his life, where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. You know, like, I'm such a person that wants to help with the world. When you're working in a first world business, you're like, what am I doing? You know, like, and that's why I think I needed to get out and volunteer and, you know, like, experience. It's like, but now what we're doing around small businesses, you know, it's like, I feel like we're making a difference, right? And I see, like, I think of, you mentioned systems earlier. I think of everything this way. I like to think of, everybody says collateral impact, bad thing, right? Bad verbiage. No, let's use it for good. Let's make the collateral impact of things amazing, right? Like the biological food chain. You know how we take something out and it ruins the chain? Let's make the chain something that, like, creates collateral impact. So let's bolster people that wouldn't have gotten into business to now form their own resources and support their communities. You know, it's like, so I think business needs to be a mission. I really do. And, like, the reason I'm saying this is because, yes, you can die hard, you can have a work hard ethic and discipline, and you can get through a business that's not a mission. I did it, right? But you will not quit a mission. And I guarantee anybody out there right now that won't quit can be successful in business. Positive of it. 1000% you'll be successful, you know, but it's easy to quit a business. It's easy to quit a business, 2023 top business ideas, but it is hard to quit a mission. And it doesn't always have to be, sorry, I just have to elaborate on this point a little bit further, but it doesn't have to be like opening a children's home, you know, or, you know, like, I'm trying to think of a good idea. It can be something, this is the best example I can give you, that's not like Patagonia, the founder.
Oh yeah.
Mountaineer, right? Wanted to help the environment, started a clothing company. Every bit of clothing, a percentage went to the environment. Then he just built his, so he just retired. I don't know if you heard this part.
Yeah.
Just retired. Shares are $3 billion, gave that all to environmental impact. You know, it's like, so the business can be something that steps towards your mission too. Like the offset is your mission, or the business can be the mission itself, like ours. You know, it's like our business is helping entrepreneurs, right? So that is the mission, you know. His was, you know, like, I'll sell clothes, but then I'll help with the mission, right? You know, and I think the thing too is, like, people are holding companies more accountable, and I love that. You know, like, they're, you know, and so you have to be about something. You know, I just heard a story. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts is Guy Raz, How I Built This. And I'm like, you know, someday I'm going to be on Guy and he's going to love that episode. Cause, like, you know, I've had no luck whatsoever. And so, but I'm listening to this guy that I'd never even heard of. He created the Taco Bell dog, and Taco Bell robbed him of it. You know, it's like,
oh, interesting.
I can't stand that stuff. You know, it's like, it's hard enough. Or Google Earth, you know, Google stole Google Earth. You know, it's like, I had my ex-girlfriend, her dad owned a couple pie shops. One of the big chains came in and said, you're not selling your pies anymore, put him out of business. I hate that stuff. You know, that's a bully. Yeah. That's not fair business. And we're talking about, like, wealth, you know, like you mentioned generational wealth. Yeah. That's why it's not good, right? You get to bully things instead of doing them the right way. Yeah.
And it's, you know, going back to something you said a minute ago, more people knowing about how to be a strong underdog, like having a role model there makes them unbullyable. Yeah. Right. It's
this is my life's work these days.
Yeah. Your story of you're taking on the richest guy in the state.
Yeah.
Right. That's the underdog looking at the bully and going, yeah, sorry, I'm not backing down. Right.
Yeah. I'll bleed more than you will. You know, so I got to tell this part if you don't mind it.
Yeah, no,
so we're working on a new company, right? And I think it's actually going to change the world. And I just, you know, like, it's okay. So anyways, we've been working on the business plan for 2 years, you know, and it's about 85 pages, you know, beautiful business plan. I think it's the most beautiful pitch deck I've ever seen, you know, and so we're doing what everybody else is doing. And so it's like, okay, let's create this business plan. I'm a bootstrapper. Every business I've opened, I've bootstrapped. But I'm like, okay, this is you know, we need probably $8 to $10 million just to start on this thing. Right. And so we're like, okay, let's raise some funding, you know, like we could do it now. You know, I've had enough connections, you know, I have I mean, a couple people I heard through the grapevine, one of the richest people in the country has actually tried to open the same business and failed at it. So, you know, he'd love to see it from us, I'm sure. I was told we were the right team that couldn't bring it there last time. And so like we have these opportunities, right? And so I sat down, I started to like, after 2 years, start to send out the pitch deck, right? We're going to fundraise for this business. And I get to the first page and I'm like, I don't want to do this. There was an F word in there too. I'll leave it out there. I'm like, I don't want to do this. You know, it's like, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to do it. We're bootstrapping this thing. You know, we're not fundraising it. Because if our goal is to help people bootstrap businesses, how horrible is the story that we just raise a bunch of money to get it?
Right,
you know,
right.
it's important that the mission gets accomplished, you know, and that's why actually we brought this production studio, because one of the most expensive parts for us is content marketing, right? We have to get the word out there on our business. So we bought the production studio in an effort to get the word out there. So we're trying to be scrappy in the way that we're thinking about the business to accomplish the unaccomplishable in a minimal amount of resources, you know? And so, I mean, another thing we're doing is we're trying to put together a road tour, you know, where I literally go out and I tell people how to open a business, you know, for free. And, you know, like you know, not to segue too much, but I'm surprised too often in my life. I'm so helpful that like people are like, what's your angle on this? You know, it's like, no, I want to help people get into business. And, you know, like if you want to know my angle, you know, if I build a community for my platform, it becomes successful, right? And I believe in doing things in the micro. So every person I help, and I'm not even talking about the paid part, just be a member of the community. Every person I help that's a part of that community, that now is power for us, right? Now we can lobby in DC about things that need to change for small business. Now, between you and I, if I heard something like that Google story, or that if I get $1 billion company under my belt, you know, Taco Bell better watch out for me if they want to go after a small business person like that. I'll sneak over and I'll talk to my big powered lawyers and I'll be like, hey, why don't we send some people over there?
Well, that's awesome. Okay, now I really want to know, like, what's the business, and like, okay, so now you've got a video a movie that I really want to watch. I just have to be like waiting, and this other business thing. That is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, we're just laying the foundation.
When's the business going to launch?
So we're working on the MVP right now. I'm hoping to launch it. Actually, the way I'm hoping to launch it is with, so you read my book, which I'm trying to get up the strength to release it. I'm afraid of it. But so you read my plan for business, right? Or I call it assessing an opportunity. So I want a really good way for business owners, small business owners, because, okay, so here's one thing I've seen in the probably 70, 100 business owners I've helped in the last 2 years that are losing their businesses. They don't know their margin, right? So that's one thing like I have to combat. They need to know their margin before they start.
Right.
They need to have some idea of it. So I think the name for our company is Glaive. And so I think Glaive's first entrance into its MVP will be a free assessment of your business that you'll go in, you'll fill out the blanks basically, and it'll tell you all about your business. And then it'll tell you the things to rethink. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I like that.
So from there, we're working on solving every single problem that's a problem that a business owner shouldn't have to deal with. Right. So businesses, our goal is like mostly around education. We're talking about teaming up with the university, maybe around the educational component. But my goal is like, if you have an LLC and that's what you're on the site to get, you know why you have an LLC.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to make it real simple and easy for people to have this sort of stuff. And going back, so our biggest competitor, I don't even know if I should put this out in the air yet. You know, like our biggest competitor in this space would be like some heavy hitters. And it's like, once again, like, how do you bridge the gap, Tyler? It's like, they got families. I don't, you know, I'll work 120 hours a week. They won't. I'll work on Friday night. They won't, you know, it's like, so once again, my plan is pain to make it work, you know?
And, you know, that's a really successful strategy.
It worked last time.
If you look around, like, that's every really successful person has had to do that. Like, you know, Alex Hormozy, part of his thing is he just worked his ass off for years, and he talks about it, and he lost all his money a couple of times through things that went sideways, right? And he got back up and he kept working at it. Joe Rogan worked his ass off, you know?
I'd like to know, I got to study Joe a little bit more. I'd like to know a little bit more about where he came from. I just heard the other day he was a welfare kid too. And so I was like, oh, really?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk, same thing, worked his ass off, right?
Yeah.
Put in a ton of work. Jeff Bezos, same thing, you know, put in a ton of work. And, you know, it's all kind of first in the family to really do anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's huge. It's amazing. Yeah. This is so cool. Oh my God. And I'm looking at the clock going, oh shit, I've had you on here for an hour now. I feel guilty.
No, Bill, not only do I appreciate you, you know, like I consider you a friend actually already, even though we've mostly interacted online, you know, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support, because believe it or not, like, it's not that hard for me to get in the ring with a middleweight and get my nose broken. It is hard for me to get online and talk about things, you know, like that's, you know, it's not hard for me to work 120 hours a week, but it is hard for me to, you know, share things about my past and things like that, you know? And so like people like you, like helping support it, or, you know, even reading my book, I can't thank you enough for doing that, you know? And so, you know, I appreciate your support. You know, I love talking to you.
I will volunteer to podcast interview anytime that's necessary to keep pulling you down this path.
Yeah.
Because it's a repetition thing, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I get what you were saying about the mindset stuff. It is important, you know, and I'm still trying to, like, believe me, my biggest guinea pig is myself. You know, it's like, I didn't start out to be this guy, you know, and I was thinking about this in the gym this morning, and I wonder what you think about it. I get my best thoughts in the gym. That's why I like love to work out. But it's like, I think you do two things in life. Maybe, you know, I'm still exploring this idea. It's like, you let things that happen to you destroy you and you go down the wrong path, or you deal with them, and maybe not always perfectly, because life isn't a Saturday afternoon special, but then you become the person that you wish would have dealt with those things for you, right? You become the person you needed. And I had a client, or one of the people on our podcast, she said, I became the hero I needed. And you know, the more I think about that, is like, yes, you know, it's like, I mean, that's the second path in life, is become who you needed, right? And become the person that like could talk right now to the 17-year-old me and straighten him up a little bit, you know? It's like, or, you know, like, or like tell that person they can get anything they want out of life. That scared kid, you know, it's not going to be a scared person anymore. You know, I'm not afraid of anybody anymore. I'll be the nicest guy you ever meet in your life, but I don't fear anybody. Nobody. Now, was that 16-year-old me? No. You know,
right. But I think a lot of it is, it's the reps of finding out that you can do something really hard and survive. And that the fear of it isn't as bad as the actual experience. Yeah. You know? And how many times has your nose been broken?
Oh, quite a few. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the worst one was probably the first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. And ribs are worse than nose anyways.
Right. Yeah. I've had my ribs get messed up, and that was the worst. No, actually femur. Don't ever break your femur.
No.
Yeah, don't do that. I did that when I was a kid. I don't recommend it. But the repetition and the seeing forward progress is what allows us to keep going in that direction. And you got to have a mission behind that to maintain, to go back and do it again and again and again. And I think there's actually, you know, you're talking about two paths. I think there's a third path. And I think the third path is the people who, you know, they don't go down and they don't rise to the challenge. They get stuck in this gray zone because they have enough strength to not go down, but they don't have any kind of a role model to allow them to say, okay, how do I get to be stronger?
They choose safety.
They choose safety, and then they die with regret.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the,
That's another good way to look at about it. So I'm talking to Scott, who's I never got the chance to say Scott isn't a hero; he's a saint. He is the best person I've ever met in my life. Like I'm honored to now consider him a friend. Like he is just this amazing individual. And oh shoot, I digress. There, I had a point around what you're saying too, tying it to Scott. Shoot, I'm sorry.
The hero path, the role model.
Oh yeah, sorry. And so Scott's a really humble guy. That's probably why most of the world hasn't heard of him. He's had all these celebrities there, to see what he's doing and things like that, but he doesn't put it out there at all. And I'm like, I was telling Scott a couple of things that I have to tell myself these days. It's like, is humble ever good? Or excuse me, is evil ever humble? Are evil people of this world trying to sell it something, trying to push you on something that just benefits them? Are they ever humble? Do they have a problem telling you about the sports car or how cool they are? No. And I'm like, well, why is good so humble? And I'm trying to get past that, because I like humbleness is something, I struggle with. My favorite person on the planet is somebody like Scott you never heard of that doesn't want any attention. But Here's the thing, we're all going to die. What's more important? Scott be humble, or Scott get out there and talk as much as he possibly can so he can save a couple more kids? And I told Scott this, and and he got it, and it's like, and that's the way I think about myself too. It's like, it's hard to go out there and talk about this stuff and, oh, I opened this business and, oh, I did this, but it's like, well, what's the impact I'm trying to make before I die? Right. So,
1,000%.
and then you have to assess where your heart's at on something. So why am I doing this action that I'm about to do? And then you check your heart, right? Is my heart in the right place with this action that I'm about to do? And even if it scares you, that means you have to do it. Right. So you don't have a choice, right? You have to jump off that edge because it builds you too.
Right. Yeah. This is the missing education that we need to have in schools. Because
Bill, if I had heard this stuff as a younger person, I'd be president right now.
yeah. Right. And that's everything, every time I learn and I realize something that's not mainstream about how humans operate, I teach my kids. Right. They don't always get it. They're like, Dad, nobody says that. I'm like, okay, not today they don't, but one of these days they will. Right. At least the ones that are really successful will. And so, and I also realize, I've had a lot of non-standard experiences in my life.
Yeah.
And so it's, like you've had a lot of non-standard experiences. And so it educated you along the way. Yeah. Because you were willing to have that happen. You were willing to learn. You have that kind of innate growth mindset.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, I hate to say it sound morbid and do it this way. I buried that kid. That kid's not a part of me really anymore. The fear part is there, and some of that to remind me, but I'm embarrassed of that person, and so like, I'll embrace who that was and the mistakes that person made in an effort to grow and be who I am today. But overall, if I had a time machine button, I'd go back and kick his butt, I'd whoop him into gear faster and we'd be further along, and so it's like, but we have mistakes, right? And there is,
we all do.
So and I tell people these days, it's like, there's no time machine, right? There's no time machine to go back. As much as I wish there was, like with no guidance, I guess I was lucky to get through, but I have some things I'm not proud of, and so it's like, so there's no time machine. So all you can do if you've made mistakes is make tomorrow's work so amazing that any of your mistakes are small in comparison to what you've accomplished. That's all you can do.
You can't change the past. You can only build a better tomorrow, Yeah, that's it. And
I'm not one of those people that forgets about the past. I embrace it, embrace the sad parts of it and use it.
Yeah. Well, that's that whole chip on your shoulder thing, right?
Yeah.
It's that self-regenerating fuel. And that's another one of those. How do you have the energy to drive your mission? Right. And again, it's one of those things people don't talk about. And
I think some of it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just it needs to be a conversation more often. Yeah.
I think some of it is. So I Scott and those guys have to deal with, like the sadness that they have to deal with constantly, or, even being children's home, animal shelter, all these different places. It's like, that's the hard part about helping, right? Is you have to look at the dark sides of things,
Right,
but
right.
it's the dark sides of things that actually push you towards change and missions, right?
Right.
Knowing these things exist in the world. I forgot to mention Scott damn near has cured child trafficking in Cambodia.
Wow. That's amazing.
What he's done over there, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. Here's this man on the other side of the world, putting kids through school, stopping sex trafficking, which is one of the most awful things that we can think of in this world.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah. So, like if any, like I would be over there in a second standing in front of Scott, like we need to protect him. He's doing, he's doing the world's work, right?
Yeah.
If we had 10 more of him, oh man, the world would be better.
You need to get him on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he does. Honestly, that's one of my biggest goals with this is to get him, like whatever I got to do, like I'm going to be like, and so I try to mention him on everything I'm on these days. I try to mention it. I was talking about him before this was even a thing years ago, it's like, I mean, I'm talking to him. I just, it's hard to find the time about spending more time over there with him. I would love to do that. They were actually teasing me about teaching a little biochemistry, so we actually, one of the things we do when we're there too, is we teach them how to use their social media stuff better so they can monetize their own platform.
Nice. Very good.
And it's so important, this point. What people don't realize these days is you don't have to travel across the world and volunteer. You don't even have to give Scott's charity money. All you have to do is watch their YouTube channel. That's it. Spend some time with it on YouTube. If somebody gets millions of hits, guess what? That's a lot of money.
Oh, that is. Yeah. So they have a YouTube channel?
Yes, but they're not using it. Like we're coaching them on how to use it better.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I need some URLs from you.
Yeah.
Before I forget, right? I need the URL for Scott's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
As soon as there's anything public that's available on the video about Scott, I need that.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you're ready to get your book out, I need that. And then
that's going to be a couple of years.
Okay. Well, and then the company that you're about to launch, whenever that goes live, because I want to put all that in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no,
of course.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Because
Glaive's MVP will hopefully be ready in the next couple months. We got so much going on. We just picked up the production studio, started a consulting firm because we already had a couple bigger clients that we were helping. That also allows us we're going to start doing more and more free seminars around small business.
Nice.
So that kind of allows a lot of that stuff, like how to use social media in small business, how to start a business, like the top 10 things that I see that business owners could like change in their business to like save it, like that sort of stuff. We're going to start working on a lot. So yeah, no, I really appreciate that.
Another thing I just thought dropped into my head, we'll have to do emails after this. There is a meetup group called Scrappy Startup.
Okay.
That's pretty big. They're I want to say 30,000 members now. They're global.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
It's all about people starting businesses.
Oh, awesome.
And I think the stuff that you're talking about would be awesome for that audience.
Yeah.
Because there's meetups here that are local, and I hear regularly people having really baseline kinds of questions about starting a business that you, I'm sure, know exactly how to answer.
And that's the thing. Like when you read my book, you're like, I wish I would have had this as a starting out business owner. And I do too, because it's just like, that was the scary part for me. It's like, I didn't know all that stuff. I just needed to, and so my book only goal really, I try to make it entertaining with all the stories of everything I did wrong, so that's the entertaining aspect. So you'll read it because I've tried to write it for the 17-year-old me, but really what's important, just see the high view, right? That's all I would have needed. These are the steps. That's it. You don't even have to tell me how to do the steps, just tell me about the steps and maybe give me a couple hints on how you screwed it up, and so I don't screw it up. So that's the hope. It's like you spend less time worrying about these small things and you can really focus on the business, right?
Exactly. So, that's super cool. Okay. This has been awesome. You're a busy guy. And I want to be able to get you on the podcast again in the future. So I need to stop so you don't say, Bill, I'm never doing that again. We talked.
No, Bill, I appreciate you more than you know. Like,
this has been
anytime.
awesome, man.
I'm
This is
glad
super
to do
cool.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad that we were able to make this work even with your phone.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
with technology, like, okay, whatever. Well, and the audio version of this, no one will know.
Yeah.
Right. You know, the audio
Yeah.
podcast, nobody knows that the video is, you know, the challenges we had at the beginning. So it's all good. This has been super cool. I really appreciate all the work you're doing. And we will definitely do this again.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's super
Honored
cool.
to be here anytime I can help. Yeah. Glad
Have
to
a
do
good
it.
day.
You too. A great one.
Thanks, man. I'll see you later.
All right.
Yeah.
See ya.
That was awesome.